mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, where I watch shit so you don't have to. And today I'm here to talk about Season 3, Episode 3 of FX's Atlanta, entitled The Old Man and the Tree. I want to start this episode right away by talking about Van, because I feel like this episode, it seemed like it almost kind of wanted to remind us that Van was part of the group. Like, it's almost like they think that we think the show is just Darius, Paperboy, and Earn, and the show is like nudging us to remind us that Van is like part of this group. There's an interesting shot at the very start of the episode. You know, we start off with the three of them walking down the street, the three male leads, walking down the street, and Earn's essentially explaining to Paperboy, and as a byproduct, us, the idea behind the episode. They're going to meet with this guy, Will, who's cool with this guy, Fernando, who's an investor, a billionaire investor, and basically they're hoping to, like, you know, cozy up with him and get him to invest in them. And as Earn is talking, the camera, like, pulls out, and we see that Van is also with them, just kind of like walking ahead of them a little bit. And that was a very intentional shot to me. I thought, like, okay, like even that was like a reminder for me. I'm like, oh, okay, so Van is here too. And it wasn't like a thing like I forgot about Van, but it was just like, oh, okay. That was an interesting way of telling me that Van's here as well. And then at the end of the episode, after Paperboy gets retribution for the money that he didn't receive after he won the poker game, which I'll talk about that scene a little bit later, everybody bails out. They hop in a car. His dude Socks is in the car somehow. They're all laughing about what happened. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, where's Van? And no one else says this. No one asks where Van is. The episode ends, and I'm thinking, like, did they forget that they, being the show, the writers or whatever, did they forget that Van was at this party too? And then, like, before I could even fully form the thought in my head, the show comes back on, and we see Van at like a restaurant eating, and Earn calls her and she like sends him the voicemail. And I haven't quite figured out what they're really trying to do with what they did with Van in this episode, but there's definitely something that they're hinting at with the way Van is kind of forgotten about by the three male leads, and the show kind of forgets about her as well, and then kind of nudges us and reminds us that she's there too. And I wonder where they're going with that. But I wanted to start with that because I just thought that was an interesting couple of scenes that revolved around Van. There's several interesting scenes that revolve around Van in this episode. But what I want to move on to, at the end of the episode, we see, actually, before I even get to that, let me start with kind of like the theme of this episode. This episode felt very themed in white guilt. Like, white guilt seemed to be a very prevailing theme in this episode. I'm going to start by talking about what happened with Darius in this episode, because I think that's probably the best example of I think this was a good example of white guilt, and then what happens in the Earn, Will, TJ storyline is an example of how one could react to it. So Darius is going to get some gin at this party, and there's this Asian lady there, very attractive. He starts to reach for, he says, I think he says like, excuse me or something like that, and she immediately goes, I'm engaged, which, it's for the record, I hate that. Like, when certain women assume that anytime someone talks to them or around them that it's about them. I saw an interesting tweet. This is super sidebar. I saw an interesting tweet where some girl tweeted something like, yeah, you know, I was at the gas station and I'm at the pump and I hear a couple of guys going, damn, oh man. And he goes, yeah, me too. And then she's like, I pretended like I didn't hear it, but I did. And then somebody retweets like, gas is $4.50. Why are you assuming they talking about you? And I'm like, I thought that was such a good point. And that's what this woman MK reeks of, is this self-absorbed, like, anytime anything happens to me, it's about me and it revolves around me and they want me. And she goes on and says something like, you know, a lot of basically black guys like her and the black guys like Asian women, which is debatable. But whatever, that's what she says. Darius makes a few jokes, boom, conversation's over with. Then this dude Socks comes up, and apparently this is spelled like socks that you put on your feet, because both him and Ern, Darius and Ern, say socks like SOX, and he's like, nah. I like it the second time when because I think Ern says socks like SOX, and then Darius is like, nah, no, it's not SOX. And Socks is just appalled at what MK said to him. And throughout the course of the episode, we see him get more riled up. We then see him invite other people into how riled up he is. Some girl goes like, I'm not okay. I don't know how you're okay. She's like crying. And you see this a lot when you get to, I think like this overly woke, super progressive left, white contingency. Because like, it seems like they really want to show just how on board they are with the black plight. And I think that that's admirable to a degree, but once it gets to this point, it comes off almost patronizing, like you expect me to believe that you actually feel this way, and they are reacting stronger to whatever the circumstances are than the actual victim of the circumstances. Darius is just sitting here like, yo, that was lightweight, not a big deal, we don't even need to talk about it. And they're just talking about Socks is like, this some 12 years of slave shit, like it's ridiculous. And that happens so much. You see it a lot on Twitter of like white folks who I guess want to show how progressive they are, overdoing it, and that comes from that place of white guilt. And I think that Darius being just unbothered by the whole situation, and them getting riled up and working themselves up into a frenzy on his behalf, is just a perfect example of how things are nowadays. And later we find out that MK is actually, when she says she was engaged, she's actually engaged to Will, who is the, I don't know, business associate of Ern, who goes to introduce him to Fernando. And Will is just like, oh, I can't marry her now. Like, it's a completely ridiculous situation. But while we're talking about completely ridiculous situations, and Will's another example of white guilt and how that can play out in a different way and how someone can react to it. So Will propositions Ern to, not propositions Ern. Well, I think he does proposition him for like a financial contribution or some sort of investment in this idea. But he wants to do this idea where he basically has like this house that creatives can live in, and everything is paid for, and they'll sell subscriptions. And he wants this artist TJ to be prominently featured, except for TJ's artwork sucks, and Ern doesn't like this idea. And the whole time, every time he tries to talk to Will about how he doesn't like this idea, TJ is like somewhere nearby on roller skates watching and getting closer. It's it's like funny because like you see like a smidge of him, and then you see he's like downstairs but a little bit closer, and then all of a sudden he's down there in the hallway with them. It was a funny sequence. This was a funnier episode, I think, than the first two, but not as engaging as the first two. But anyway. Later, Ern has a conversation with Paperboy about this entire situation. He's like, he wants to do this with this TJ guy, but this work sucks. And I feel like this TJ guy is just ripping him off, like conning him, basically taking advantage. And Paperboy says something to the effect of like, white people been doing this kind of shit. Like, what you think TikTok is? They been stealing stuff and fleecing motherfuckers. And like black people, he's like, scamming. That's the word he used. Like, black people should be doing more scamming. And I thought, man, that is so true. Because, like, that's what that is kind of what TikTok is like white folks with a whole bunch of followers doing something that they saw black people doing who don't have as many followers. And then the white person is attributed and given all the credit for it. And it is a ridiculous set of circumstances. But Ern starts out wanting to defend Will. No, I take it back. Not defend, protect him. He wants to protect him. And then after this conversation with Paperboy, he goes back later and he's like, yeah, you know what? I think it is a good idea, but I think TJ needs a manager. He gets paid 30%, but I'll take 25%. Like, Ern actually not only allows this fleecing of Will to happen to where they scam him to get money, but he also takes a piece for himself. Like, I'll do it for 25%. So I thought that was a really cool, that when I said that you could see how you could react to white guilt in a different way. Darius, well, we don't see necessarily Darius's reaction, but we see an example of white guilt. And then with this story, we see a different example of white guilt, but a situation in which TJ and Ern decide that they're actually going to take advantage of it. And I think that's a an interesting conversation to have. How should you react to that? Is either one of these the right or wrong way? I personally fall on Earn's side and Paperboy's side. Paperboy constantly says wise things in very just like a normal dude, like how we talk. Like, but he'll say something like shockingly profound. But the last thing I want to talk about is Paperboy's situation with Fernando. So Paperboy meets Fernando. There's actually a Nando's in his house. Speaking of which, we didn't even talk about the house. There's like a decoy house. That's what Darius coined it. A decoy house. It looks like they're like in the slums, right? And they go through this decoy house. It's got glass on the stairs. They go up some stairs. Will punches in a code and opens up a door, and they're in like a beautiful house. And it's got its own Nando's in it. They get some chicken. Everything's cool. Fernando goes, yo, you want to go? He's like, how do you feel? How do you like trees? And immediately I took it the same way Paperboy did. Paperboy's like, I love trees. Like, he made some weird frog analogy or metaphor or something like that. And then they go out and they see it's an actual tree. I think he said it was like the first ever tree in London or something like that. And it was built. This house was built around it, like some wildly historical tree. And then he's like, if you actually want to smoke trees, then we can go to my poker room and play poker. So he plays poker. Fernando tells this weird story about a black ghost busting a nut on him. I don't know. That's what Paperboy took it as. I kind of took it the same way. I think we're meant to kind of like have that dual interpretation of this guy's dream. And eventually Paperboy wins the hand. He was like 40 grand, and Fernando dips. And Fernando dips, and everyone else dips, and he's just like, yo, where my money at? And then Paperboy has like the black version of Stewie from Family Guy. Where's my money? Where's my money? And he just goes around, where's my money? He's taking people's chicken. He's cutting into the first ever tree in London. It's a ridiculous scene, but it's hilarious. So a couple of notes before I wrap up. But again, Atlanta is such an interesting show. I love how this show doesn't hold your hand. Like, every episode, they're trying to make a point. They make the point through story. Usually it's something ridiculous or ludicrous that happens to these people, but it all has a point. And I love how they do that with each of these episodes, and that they're all kind of like standalone episodes for the most part. You don't have to be too familiar with the show up to this point to enjoy a specific episode. Like we could show the season premiere to somebody who's never seen an episode of Atlanta, and it's fine. They'll get it. So, really good episode. I'm loving this season so far. I'm sure it's going to continue to be great. But I want to close out with a couple of thoughts. All right. One of my thoughts was about Fernando's black ghost story. So we don't have to talk about that. And then I also thought it was funny. And I want to know where they're going with Van. Like, not just the reminders that she's there, that the show is nudging us with, but also what's going on with her personally. Like, it's interesting, like, she's got a new man, but she's in London with Earn. Earn says he's worried about her. She seems very just kind of like free, like, everything's fine, don't worry about it. And then we see her like casually stealing stuff from this guy's house, which I thought was actually pretty funny, and like pushing people in the pool. Like, I don't know what's up with Van, but I like it. But I do want to I will enjoy if we actually like dig a little bit deeper and find out just how she's feeling and why she's behaving in the way that she's behaving. But yeah, like I said, great episode. Loving this show, and I will be back earlier this time. I took my kids to Great Wolf Lodge, which is like an indoor water park in Ohio. I'm from Detroit, so we drove down there, and I took my kids there, and we just got back. I don't know, maybe like a couple hours ago. So I got a lot of Friday videos to get caught up on, but should be on time next Friday for episode 4. And until then, peace.